A quorum being present, we'll call the meeting to order. Our first item, as usual, is to review and approve the minutes of our meeting of July 1. Entertain a motion. We have a motion. Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. They are approved. And our first item for consideration, Mr. Bronson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. We have a sole item for your consideration this afternoon. It is item 3A. It's an allocation of a total of $1,750,000, $153,255 from the 1995 GO bond authorization, proposition number 1, streets, and almost $1.6 million from the 2007 GO bond authorization, also proposition number 1, streets. We propose to allocate, with your approval, that to project number PC0376, which is a listed street widening improvement on Wilshire Boulevard from County Line to Council Road. Here's an aerial view of the project limits. Just for information, the mile to the east, the mile from Rockwell to Council, was completed in 4-lane as part of the 1989 GO bond program, and it has an average daily traffic count of 10,800 cars per day. The mile immediately to the west from County Line to Morgan Road was just recently completed as part of the 2012 bond authorization. We do not have a current traffic count on that, but that is the mile that intersects with the west part of the Kilpatrick Turnpike. So we have every reason to believe that when we get a new up-to-date traffic account, that it would probably be in the 10 to 11,000 cars per day area. Here are some current pictures of the mile in question as it stands today. The total amount that we're asking for your approval today, the $1.75 million, can be entirely attributed to the amount and the size of the drainage structures that need to be installed in this mile. This area, if you've ever been out there, is extremely flat, and when you don't have a natural flow line, any place for the water to go, that means you have to increase the number of inlets in the street and also the size of the pipe used to carry the water off of the street. When we were discussing this last week at the Bond Oversight Committee, where we get approval from the manager's office to put these items on your agenda, Mr. Clowers indicated that in one of the sections, either, I think it was immediately to the south or the west, three of the four corners, I think, when they're surveyed, they are all of the same elevation. So that's a pretty good illustration of how extremely flat this area is, thus the need for the extensive drainage infrastructure to go along with the paving project. So all of the $1.7 million is due to the drainage constraints that we have and that we have to build into the project.
I have a question that is more general than specific to this area, but when you do traffic counts, are the times of day that the traffic the distribution over time of the traffic, is that counted as well?
Yes.
Is that recorded as well?
Yes, it's all recorded, but what we refer to normally is the average daily traffic. So that takes into consideration all periods of the day. And on this particular mile, the current count is upwards of 10,300. So in this mile and the mile immediately to the east, we have over 10,000 cars a day, and there's surely no reason to believe that now that the turnpike intersects with a new 4-lane street immediately to the west, that those counts are also not going to be in the 10 to 11,000 cars per day range.
Is there a magic number that a street similar to this one would carry that would cause you to consider it for 4-laning?
We usually look at about 10,000. That's the standard that we use. Also, when we in the wintertime, or actually in the fall, when we start looking at possible revisions to our snow route maps, we also look for any increases in that average, in that average daily traffic in order to maybe add a street, or if the traffic count has fallen off, maybe to take a street off. So we're always looking at that average daily traffic in order to make those decisions.
Are there any other questions, concerns?
Yes, sir.
It seems like this is a big oversight. I mean, why would they have estimated so low in the first place?
That's a good question. I think when, in general, when they were doing the estimates for all of the streets, we come up with an average section, and we pretty much use a standard amount, for the width of the street, the depth of the asphalt, the amount of base material. There is some amount calculated in there for drainage, but obviously in this case it was way short on the calculation. And once we have actually gotten with the consultant who's doing the design on this project, and we've been able to do some what's called value engineering, where we found some cost reduction, but it's only probably $250,000 to $300,000 worth of cost savings we can have by maybe using a different type of pipe in certain area, and that type of thing. So, but still, obviously we still have a need for quite a large sum of money. We're going to be advertising this project the end of this month, and right now it's tentatively scheduled to award in October of this year. And I might say one more thing. It is an excessive amount. It's quite a large amount, but the first call, or the primary purpose for unlisted funds is for this very purpose, to make sure that we have sufficient funds that are undesignated, that in a situation like this, we can allocate it to a listed project in order to make sure we complete the listed project, because that's the first priority of any bond authorization, is to complete the listed projects. And when you do have overruns of this magnitude, that's why we include in the overall authorization a certain amount of unlisted funds that, if necessary, we can draw on in a situation like this.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that a piece of this is requested from the 95 GFI. Just a general question in terms of, is there a time limit on bond sheet that we need to spend? Again, I see that,
We try to, at least in the last 5 or 6 years, we have really done a good job of expending 85% of the bond proceeds from a particular sale year within 3 years. That's an IRS regulation that, admittedly, in the past, we did not do a real good job of attaining. These funds from the 95, there might be, I don't know, one project left in the 95, and what these funds are funds that we've rounded up from completed projects, and this is an excellent use because it's the same type of funds, same type of proposition. It's for streets, and if we can get those monies spent as part of this project and get them out the door, that makes the people in accounting real happy, because they don't have to keep track of that money anymore.
So there are general IRS guidelines, but not necessarily are they all, for practical reasons, I understand that there's no really deadline as such that they have funds happening.
Not that I'm aware of. Amy might know of something, but
There are, and Paul is absolutely right, they're called arbitrage penalties because these are tax-exempt bonds. But the time starts to run once we sell the bonds. So we might get an authorization, but we don't sell all of that all at once. We just sell little pieces each year. So just by looking at this, that it's the 95 authorization, I can't tell off the top of my head whether we violated any arbitrages because we might not have even sold those within 3 years. We probably did, but we don't know. We'd have to go back to finance and find out.
Well, and the key is that you
Yeah.
spend, that you expend 85% of the
Of the
bond sale
sold,
proceeds.
yeah.
This $153,000, it was rounded up from a number of different projects, so it's quite likely that on those individual projects that we sold the bonds for, that we did expend it within the 3-year time limit. We're just
5%, is that just listed projects, or can that include unlisted?
that's all. That's
Whatever's sold. Yeah.
whatever sold in a particular year.
And our outside bond counsel, they keep track of that and are on top of things because there have been cities in the past that have gotten audited, and what will happen is you'll have to pay those penalties, and that's just not something that would want to happen.
I have another general question.
Yes, sir.
And looking at a picture of this road, I wonder, do you design drainage structures on both sides of the street or just on one side? And if you do it on one side, how do you get the water to go there if the street is a concave street? I mean, with a curve.
You do it on both sides of the street,
I see.
because the road does have a crown in it, and it
Yes. Okay.
it drains both ways.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or concerns about this project? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve. You have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. The item is approved.
Thank you.
Only having a single item today, our meeting is extremely short. And do we have any informational items to present to us today? We don't. Do we have any new business? Are there any items that from committee members? Proceed, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. After our last meeting last month, I visited with Dennis Clowers for a few minutes after that meeting, and I inquired about the possibility of using any bond funds that might go toward bus shelters. Whenever I don't travel a whole lot, but when I do, I usually try to take public transportation, and I had just come back from a trip actually where I did that, and it's such a stark contrast in Oklahoma City to where I was visiting. Actually, it was in St. Louis. In the lack of bus shelters. Of course, we have some bus shelters. I recognize that here in the city, but we certainly lack suitable and bus shelters that would make it comfortable, to say the least, for folks who rely on public transportation. I know that this last budget year, the council voted for, put another $1 million extra dollars in Copka's budget, and I hope that will increase the frequency of bus routes and service. Having said that, I think that again, we're a far cry from where we'd like to be in a lot of ways with public transit, but one of those things that mean a lot to those people who happen to be relying on transportation is if it's not a shaded area, or in the wintertime, of course, how uncomfortable it can be waiting for a bus out in the elements. So with Dennis's suggestions, he suggested that I contact Laura Johnson. Laura Johnson is one of our assistant city managers here, and if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read the email that she responded to when I asked her about the possible use bond money for bus shelters in a previous bond issue. And what she sent to me on July 16th, as per our, and she gave me a call and I asked her to send me an email. As per our telephone conversation earlier, this is in response to your question, if it is possible for general obligation bond funds to be spent on putting in bus shelters. It appears to me that the answer is yes. First, Proposition 1, which we all know is streets, can be used if the project is included in a street project instead of listed or unlisted. Next, Proposition 10, which is for transit, includes language that covers transit facilities, and I believe shelters could be considered transit facilities. Of course, the issue there with transit is that there's only about $25,000 left in that proposition. If you have any other questions, please call, what have you. And so I had the opportunity, I ran into Rick Kane, who directs Kopka for us, and he tells me that they've already kind of looked at the need for bus shelters, and that the Kopka has identified as many as 17 locations throughout the city that probably could really use a bus shelter. And so I bring that up today as not knowing any kind of a process that's appropriate and is used when members of the advisory board might have some thoughts about having this explored further.
Yeah.
And so I guess my question might be if there is a way that we could ask staff if that would be the appropriate way to go about this. I know this is not an agenda item and we can't vote on anything, but to get some feedback from staff about their thoughts on this issue.
I think that's that asking staff is an appropriate item, and would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, we'll visit among staff and get back with you on that. Be glad to do that.
Thank you.
That appears to conclude our agenda for today. I need to ask if there are any citizens to be heard. There are none. I would entertain a motion, therefore, to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.